Success does not come knocking. It does not send polite invitations. It does not wait for you to feel ready. Success responds to one thing and one thing only: boldness. Not noise, not wishes, not talent without teeth. Boldness, the kind that moves before certainty arrives, the kind that burns bridges behind it and builds roads ahead with faith, discipline, and an unshakable decision. Most people spend their lives negotiating with their potential. They bargain with fear. They delay their destiny with the language of someday. They call hesitation wisdom and disguise doubt as patience. But history does not remember the careful. It remembers the committed. Edison did not wait for permission to fail 1,000 times. Carnegie did not ask if steel would welcome him. Ford did not poll the world to see if it was ready to move faster. They acted as if the future was theirs to command, and the future obeyed. The truth about success is uncomfortable because it demands ownership. It says the reason you are not where you want to be is not the economy, not your background, not your age, not your lack of connections. The reason is that somewhere along the way, you chose safety over courage. You chose explanation over execution. You chose to observe life instead of directing it. Boldness begins in the mind, not as reckless impulse, but as a settled conviction, a decision so final that doubt is denied oxygen. This is where most people fracture. They want results without resolve. They want confidence without clarity. They want belief without discipline. But belief is not a feeling you wait for. It is a posture you adopt. It is the decision to stand tall before evidence agrees with you. Every great achievement starts as an internal rebellion, a refusal to accept the ordinary story handed down by circumstance. When Lincoln stood against a divided nation, he did not possess certainty, he possessed resolve. When Disney lost his first studio, he did not lose his vision, he refined it. When you decide to be bold, you are not claiming immunity from hardship, you are declaring dominion over direction. Clarity sharpens boldness. Vague desires produce timid actions. A blurred vision invites distraction. The mind must be given a single target and told without negotiation that this is where we are going. This is why most people drift. They hope clarity will arrive from outside. But clarity is forged through choice. You decide what matters, and the mind organizes around that decision like iron filings to a magnet. Vision is not daydreaming. Vision is disciplined imagination. It is seeing the end so vividly that the present begins to rearrange itself. Napoleon Hill spoke of a burning desire, a desire so alive it refuses to be silenced. That desire is not passive. It demands structure. It demands habits. It demands that you rise when comfort says sleep, that you study when entertainment says escape, that you act when fear says wait. Purpose gives boldness its backbone. Without purpose, courage becomes chaos. With purpose, every sacrifice makes sense. Purpose is the reason you endure the lonely seasons, the misunderstood seasons, the seasons when progress whispers instead of shouts. It is the inner compass that keeps you moving when applause is absent and results are delayed. Discipline is the daily proof of boldness. Not intensity for a week, but consistency for years. The bold do not rely on motivation, they rely on systems. They show up when no one is watching. They master their mornings, because they understand that the first victory of the day sets the tone for every battle that follows. They command their time because they know time, once wasted, never forgives. Action transforms belief into reality. Thought alone is a rehearsal. Action is the performance. You can study success your entire life and never touch it if you refuse to move. The bold act imperfectly. They learn by doing. They adjust without apology. They understand that momentum is born from movement, not meditation alone. Gratitude anchors the bold in abundance. It keeps ambition from turning into anxiety. When you appreciate what you have while pursuing what you want, you operate from power, not desperation. Gratitude sharpens perception. It trains the mind to see opportunity where others see obstacles. Adaptability is boldness with intelligence. The world changes. Markets shift. Paths collapse. The bold do not cling to plans, they cling to principles. They bend without breaking. They evolve without losing identity. Resilience is not stubbornness, it is informed persistence. It is knowing when to press forward and when to pivot, without ever retreating from the ultimate aim. Learning is the quiet companion of courage. The bold remain students. They read when others scroll. They listen when others talk. They respect history because it reveals patterns, and patterns reveal power. They know that ignorance is expensive and humility is profitable. And through it all, there is a calm intensity, a knowing that success is not random, it is responsive. It responds to those who step forward when the path is unclear, who speak when their voice shakes, who choose themselves before the world agrees. Success does not obey the hesitant. It does not reward the almost. It obeys only the bold. Boldness is tested when silence answers your effort. When you move with conviction and the world does not immediately respond. This is the moment where most retreat. They interpret delay as denial. They mistake resistance for rejection. But delay is not failure, it is refinement. Nature never rushes its strongest creations. The oak does not apologize for growing slower than the grass, because it knows storms are coming. Resilience is not loud, it is quiet endurance. It is waking up the day after disappointment and choosing to continue without drama. It is carrying belief through fatigue. The bold understand that struggle is not a sign you are off course. Often, it is proof you are exactly where growth happens. Pressure reveals structure. Fire reveals purity. Every setback carries instruction. Edison did not call his failures losses, he called them discoveries. Each attempt carved clarity. Each mistake narrowed the path. This is how mastery is formed, not through perfection, but through persistence guided by learning. When you refuse to learn, pain repeats itself. When you learn, pain upgrades into wisdom. The mind must be guarded with vigilance. What you consume becomes what you consider possible. The bold are ruthless about mental diet. They do not entertain conversations that poison ambition. They do not rehearse limitation. They choose environments, books, people, ideas that stretch identity upward. You cannot rise above what you repeatedly listen to. Self-mastery is the highest form of power. Before you command circumstances, you must command impulses. The bold do not obey every emotion. They feel fear and act anyway. They feel doubt and proceed regardless. Emotion is information, not instruction. Discipline decides. When you master the inner world, the outer world begins to align. Faith, in its truest form, is action taken before proof. It is moving while the bridge is still forming beneath your feet. History was written by men and women who acted as if unseen forces were already working in their favor, and they were right. Confidence is not arrogance. It is trust in preparation and purpose. Time exposes intention. Many declare desire. Few demonstrate it over years. The bold play the long game. They invest where others consume. They plant seeds in seasons when no harvest is visible. They understand that consistency compounds quietly, then suddenly. Overnight success is simply delayed recognition. There comes a moment when you realize no one is coming to save you. No perfect mentor, no flawless opportunity, no ideal timing. This realization can crush you or free you. For the bold, it is liberation. Because when responsibility is fully accepted, power is instantly restored. You stop waiting. You start building. Leadership begins with example. You do not need permission to live deliberately. When you move with courage, you grant others silent permission to do the same. This is legacy, not fame, but impact. Not applause, but influence that outlives you. In the end, success is not an external trophy. It is an internal alignment. When your thoughts, actions, and values move in one direction without contradiction. When you become someone who keeps promises to yourself first. The bold sleep well not because life is easy, but because their conscience is clear. Remember this truth and let it settle deep. Success is not persuaded by excuses. It is not impressed by intention alone. It listens for footsteps. It responds to motion. It obeys those who choose courage over comfort, clarity over chaos, and action over fear, again and again, until reality has no choice but to comply. There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when the bold separate themselves forever from the ordinary. It is not marked by applause. No one announces it. It happens when you decide to stop explaining yourself. When you stop needing approval for a vision that was never meant to be voted on. In that moment, your energy changes, your posture changes. Your decisions become sharper because they are no longer crowded by outside voices. Most people live externally. They outsource confidence. They wait for validation to act, for permission to believe, for consensus to commit. The bold reverse the order. They commit first, they act second, and validation arrives last, if it arrives at all. They understand that greatness is often lonely at the beginning, misunderstood in the middle, and celebrated only at the end. Fear does not disappear on the path to success, it evolves. Early fear asks, what if I fail? Later fear asks, what if I succeed and become responsible for more? The bold answer both the same way, I will rise to what is required. They do not seek a life without pressure, they seek shoulders strong enough to carry it. Identity is the hidden engine of achievement. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of who you believe you are. This is why superficial motivation fades. It tries to pull behavior upward without upgrading identity. True transformation happens when you see yourself differently. When discipline becomes who I am, not what I try to do. When excellence becomes a standard, not a mood. The bold rehearse victory internally long before it appears externally. They see themselves finishing when others quit. They imagine solutions before problems fully form. This is not fantasy, it is mental conditioning. The mind follows the images it is fed. Give it chaos and it produces confusion. Give it clarity and it produces direction. Patience is not passive waiting, it is active endurance. It is the ability to hold your vision steady while the world tests your resolve. Impatience ruins more destinies than failure ever could. The bold understand timing. They push when it is time to push, and they prepare when it is time to prepare. They respect the process because the process builds the person. Sacrifice is unavoidable. The only question is what you will sacrifice. Comfort now or regret later. Ease today or excellence tomorrow. The bold choose consciously. They trade short-term pleasure for long-term power. Not because they are emotionless, but because they are intentional. Adversity is a teacher that cannot be ignored. It strips away illusion, it reveals character. When life applies pressure, masks fall, excuses collapse. What remains is truth. And truth, though sometimes painful, is always useful. The bold do not curse adversity, they study it. They ask, what is this shaping me into? Momentum is fragile at first, it must be protected. Early wins are often small and easy to dismiss, but they are sacred. They are proof that movement creates response. The bold honor small progress because they know small progress compounds into massive transformation when left uninterrupted. There is no neutrality in life. You are either moving forward or drifting backward. Maintenance is a myth. The bold accept this and stay in motion. Even reflection becomes fuel for action, not an excuse for stagnation. And eventually, something shifts. The resistance softens. Opportunities appear where walls once stood. People call it luck. It is not. It is alignment catching up to effort. It is reality responding to persistence. It is success recognizing one of its own. When you reach this point, humility becomes essential. Ego destroys what discipline builds. The bold remain grounded. They remember where they started. They stay grateful, not because life is perfect, but because growth is still happening. In the final analysis, success is obedient, not generous. It gives nothing freely. It responds to demand backed by action. It yields only to those who refuse to live small, who refuse to shrink their vision to fit their fear, who refuse to negotiate with mediocrity. So stand firm, decide fully, act boldly. Let doubt exhaust itself trying to catch you. Because once you move with conviction, once your life carries the unmistakable weight of intention, success has no choice. It obeys only the bold. And even then, when success begins to respond, you must not relax your grip on yourself. Because the greatest danger is not failure. It is comfort. Comfort dulls the edge. Comfort whispers that you've arrived, that the work is done, that vigilance is no longer required. The bold do not fall for this illusion. They understand that growth has no finish line. There is only the next standard. Complacency is silent decay. It does not announce itself. It disguises itself as satisfaction. The bold appreciate progress, but they do not worship it. They stay hungry, not from lack, but from purpose. Hunger keeps the senses sharp. Hunger keeps the vision alive. Responsibility expands as success grows. More eyes, more expectations, more consequences. This is where character must deepen. Power without principle corrupts. Influence without integrity collapses. The bold anchor themselves in values that do not change when circumstances do. They decide in advance who they will be when temptation appears, so the decision is already made. Solitude becomes valuable at this stage. Not isolation, but intentional distance from noise. Reflection sharpens judgment. Silence restores perspective. The bold make space to think, to evaluate, to realign. They do not confuse motion with progress. They pause not to stop, but to aim. Service enters the equation. True success turns outward. It lifts, it builds, it multiplies. The bold understand that contribution is the highest form of wealth. What you give reinforces who you are. Impact outlives income. Legacy outlasts recognition. There will be seasons when the fire feels dimmer, not gone, just quieter. This is not decline. It is depth. Passion matures into commitment. Excitement transforms into resolve. The bold do not chase constant intensity. They respect rhythm. They remain faithful even when the emotion fades. Comparison becomes irrelevant. You stop measuring your chapter against someone else's highlight. You realize every path has costs you cannot see from the outside. The bold compete only with yesterday's self. Progress becomes personal, not performative. Wisdom accumulates slowly. Patterns repeat. Lessons echo. You begin to see life less as a series of events and more as a system of causes and effects. The bold operate upstream. They adjust inputs to influence outcomes. They master leverage, where small actions create large results. And then there is peace. Not the absence of challenge, but the presence of alignment. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. You know why you move. This clarity is strength. It cannot be shaken by trends or opinions. At the core of it all remains the same law. Success responds to boldness sustained over time. Not a moment of courage, but a lifestyle of decisive action. Not one leap, but thousands of steps taken when stopping would have been easier. So if you are listening to this now, understand this is not inspiration. It is an invitation. An invitation to stop waiting, to stop shrinking, to stop negotiating with the version of yourself you know you are capable of becoming. Decide, commit, move. Let your actions speak so loudly that doubt has nothing left to say. Let your discipline outlast your fear. Let your vision outgrow your excuses, because the truth has not changed. It never will. Success is not impressed by intention. It is not moved by hope alone. It does not respond to those who hesitate at the edge of their potential. It obeys only the bold. And when the world begins to mirror back what you have been projecting for years, when doors open that once felt sealed, when momentum feels less like struggle and more like gravity, you must remember how this was built, not by luck, not by chance, but by decisions repeated long after excitement faded. Because the bold never confuse momentum with entitlement. They know favor follows preparation. They know opportunity is attracted to readiness. And they know that what comes easily can leave just as easily if discipline is abandoned. This is where mastery deepens. You stop chasing outcomes and start refining inputs. You care less about applause and more about precision. Your questions evolve. No longer how do I get more, but how do I become sharper, cleaner, more intentional? The bold refine their thinking like a blade. They remove excess. They simplify. Complexity is for beginners. Power lives in clarity. Energy becomes sacred. You stop wasting it on arguments that go nowhere, on relationships that drain vision, on habits that dull focus. You protect your inner world because you finally understand everything external flows from it. The bold are not harsh, they are selective. There is a certain calm that comes with self-trust, not arrogance, not bravado, a quiet certainty. You've seen yourself keep going when quitting was justified. You've watched yourself stand alone without collapsing. That history becomes fuel. Confidence is no longer something you try to summon, it is something you remember. Pressure still comes. Challenges still arrive. But panic leaves. Drama fades. You respond instead of react. You think long-term under short-term stress. This is composure, the signature of the bold. Failure, when it appears now, is different. It no longer attacks identity. It no longer defines worth. It becomes data, feedback, a temporary signal pointing toward refinement. The bold do not personalize outcomes, they personalize effort. And effort, when sustained, changes everything. The world is shaped by people who did not need guarantees, who did not wait for perfect conditions, who moved while afraid, spoke while uncertain, and persisted while misunderstood. Every advancement in history, every empire, invention, movement was born from someone willing to look unreasonable to those who lacked vision. Normal never changes the world. The bold accept that misunderstanding is the tax of leadership. They do not waste time correcting every false narrative. Time exposes truth better than argument ever could. Consistency silences doubt louder than explanation. Eventually you realize you are no longer becoming bold, you are bold. Courage is no longer something you practice, it is something you embody. Your standards rise automatically, your tolerance for mediocrity disappears. Not because you judge others, but because you respect yourself. And with that respect comes responsibility to keep growing, to keep learning, to keep choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. This is the silent oath of the bold. There is no final arrival, only deeper alignment, only broader impact, only greater responsibility carried with steadier hands. So if at any point you feel tired, remember why you started. If you feel alone, remember that pioneers always are. If you feel fear, remember it is the shadow cast by something meaningful. Do not shrink back now. Stand taller, think cleaner, move with intent. Let every step you take confirm the truth you already know in your bones, that you were not built for a small life, a quiet resignation, or a future decided by default. You were built to choose. And when you choose boldly, again and again, life responds. History responds. Opportunity responds. Success responds. Because beneath all the noise, all the theory, all the advice, one law remains undefeated. Success does not follow the careful. It does not reward the hesitant. It does not wait for permission. It obeys only the bold. And long after the applause fades, long after the milestones blur into memory, the bold continue. Not because they need recognition, but because stopping would feel like betrayal. Betrayal of the discipline that shaped them. Betrayal of the standards they fought to earn. Betrayal of the quieter version of themselves who once dreamed in the dark and promised not to quit. This is where success becomes internal law. You no longer ask if something is possible. You ask if it is aligned. You no longer chase motivation. You build rituals. You no longer fear hard seasons. You expect them and prepare for them. The bold stop romanticizing ease. They respect resistance because it keeps them sharp. There is a deep knowing that settles in at this stage. Life responds to identity faster than it responds to effort. When you become decisive, decisions come to you. When you become disciplined, opportunities trust you. When you become reliable, responsibility finds you. This is not coincidence. It is cause and effect operating without emotion. The bold understand leverage. They know that one focused hour beats 10 distracted ones. That one clear goal beats 100 vague intentions. That one uncompromised value beats endless external pressure. They simplify relentlessly. They cut away what does not serve the mission, not out of cruelty, but out of respect for the vision. You begin to see how few people truly commit, how many live in rehearsal but never perform, how many talk fluently about change yet refuse the inconvenience it demands. This awareness does not make you arrogant, it makes you grateful and even more resolved. Because you remember how easy it would be to drift. Drift is the enemy of destiny. It happens slowly, quietly, through small compromises that seem harmless in isolation. The bold stay alert. They audit their habits. They question their routines. They recalibrate often. What worked at one level may fail at the next. Growth demands evolution. There is a certain loneliness that comes with clarity. Fewer people understand your pace. Fewer relate to your standards. But the bold do not dilute themselves to belong. They would rather walk alone in truth than crowded in compromise. And over time, the right people appear, drawn not by words, but by consistency. The past loses its grip. Old labels fall away. Old limits dissolve. You stop introducing yourself by what you survived and start defining yourself by what you're building. Pain no longer narrates your story. Purpose does. And when fear tries to return, as it always does, you recognize it instantly, not as an enemy, but as a signal. Fear shows up when something matters. The bold acknowledge it, then move anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear decide. At this point, success feels less like pursuit and more like partnership. You move, it responds. You commit, it aligns. You hesitate less because experience has taught you a permanent truth. Action clarifies everything. Waiting clarifies nothing. You no longer need to announce your intentions. Your behavior does that for you. Your calendar tells the truth. Your habits tell the truth. Your results tell the truth. And that truth becomes unshakable confidence. This is the final shift. You stop asking life for permission. You stop asking people for validation. You stop asking circumstances for approval. You decide. You move. You adjust. You continue. No drama, no negotiation. And in that simplicity, there is power. Because the world, chaotic, uncertain, demanding as it is, responds to those who respond to themselves first, those who govern their inner world with discipline and their outer world with courage, those who refuse to live on the edge of their potential. So let this be the line you do not cross backward. Let this be the standard you do not lower. Let this be the decision you do not revisit. Whatever it costs, pay it. Whatever it demands, become it. Whatever it requires, learn it. Because comfort is expensive, regret costs more. And at the end of it all, when effort has hardened into character and vision has turned into reality, you will understand why this law never changes. Success was never complicated. It was never random. It was never reserved for the lucky. It was waiting for someone bold enough to stop circling the edge of their life and step fully into it. Waiting for you. And when you step fully into it, there is no thunderclap, no cinematic explosion, just a quiet alignment, the feeling that for the first time, you are no longer resisting who you were meant to become. Effort no longer feels forced. Discipline no longer feels heavy. What once required willpower now feels natural because your identity has caught up with your ambition. This is when life stops feeling random. You notice patterns sooner. You sense when something is off before it breaks. You recognize opportunity not because it's loud, but because it fits. The bold develop intuition through experience. They trust it because it has been tested under pressure, refined through mistakes and proven in moments when logic alone was not enough. You also learn restraint. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every invitation deserves your time. The bold do not confuse accessibility with obligation. They choose depth over noise, focus over frenzy. They know that power leaks through distraction. There is a maturity that comes with sustained boldness. You stop reacting to provocation. You stop proving yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You understand that silence, when chosen, can be stronger than argument. Presence can be stronger than explanation. The world may still try to rush you, to pull you into urgency without importance, to convince you that everything is critical, that everything must be done now. The bold resist this pressure. They operate from priority, not panic. They know the difference between movement and progress. At this level, you become dangerous, in the best sense of the word. Not reckless, not aggressive. Dangerous because you are grounded, because you cannot be easily manipulated, because you do not need approval to act or applause to continue. You are internally governed, and internally governed people shape externally chaotic worlds. You begin to see how rare this is. How many people live as passengers in their own lives, reacting, coping, adjusting, never fully choosing? This realization does not harden you, it humbles you, because you know how close you once were to doing the same. Gratitude deepens again here. Not loud gratitude, but steady appreciation. Gratitude for the struggle that refined you, for the delays that redirected you, for the resistance that strengthened you. You no longer resent the hard seasons, you credit them. There is also forgiveness. Not because forgetting is easy, but because carrying resentment is expensive. The bold release what no longer serves the future. They do not drag old weights into new chapters. Clarity demands lightness. Vision continues to expand. Not just personal goals now, but impact, contribution, what you can build that outlasts you. The bold eventually ask a bigger question: what am I here to advance? This is where ambition matures into mission, and mission stabilizes everything. When setbacks appear, and they still do, you meet them with steadiness. You have been here before. You know the rhythm. You assess. You adapt. You act. Panic does not help. Drama does not solve. Movement does. You no longer romanticize the beginning or fear the end. You respect the middle, the long stretch where most quit, where progress is slow and unglamorous, where discipline proves its worth. This is where lives are actually built, and slowly, almost without noticing, you become an example. Not by speeches, not by declarations, but by consistency. People watch how you move under pressure, how you respond to uncertainty, how you hold your standards when no one is enforcing them. Influence grows quietly like this. You understand now that boldness is not a single act, it is a posture, a way of meeting life, a refusal to live accidentally, a commitment to respond rather than drift. So if doubt ever whispers again, and it will, let it whisper. You no longer need to silence it. Your actions have already answered every question it could ask. You know what happens when you commit. You know what happens when you persist. You know what happens when you act before certainty. You have lived the proof. And that is why this truth becomes unshakable, not as a quote, not as motivation, but as experience etched into your character. Life does not reward intentions. Reality does not bend to wishes. The future does not yield to those who wait. It moves for those who move first. It opens for those who step forward. It responds to those who decide. Success was never distant. It was never hiding. It was never selective. It was listening. Listening for courage in your actions. Listening for conviction in your habits. Listening for boldness sustained long enough to be undeniable. And when it heard that signal, clear, consistent, uncompromising, it responded, as it always does. Because success, in the end, has only ever obeyed one thing, the bold. And even now, as that truth settles deeper, you understand something most never do. Boldness is not loud confidence on good days. It is quiet resolve on the worst ones. It is the ability to keep your standards intact when circumstances tempt you to lower them. It is choosing to act in alignment when no one is counting, when no reward is guaranteed, when the only witness is your own conscience. This is where integrity becomes power. You realize that every small decision is a vote for the person you are becoming. Every morning you either reinforce discipline or negotiate it away. Every choice either sharpens self-trust or weakens it. The bold are meticulous here. They treat promises to themselves as sacred, because once self-trust is broken, nothing external can replace it. Life continues to test this. It offers shortcuts. It presents almost right options. It whispers, just this once. The bold hear it and decline. Not because they are rigid, but because they are clear. Clarity removes temptation. When you know exactly who you are building toward, distractions lose their appeal. There is also grace at this level. You no longer need perfection. You allow yourself to be human without being undisciplined. You correct quickly. You recover fast. You do not spiral over mistakes because your identity is anchored deeper than outcomes. The bold fail forward with humility and speed. You begin to see how everything connects. Thoughts shape emotions. Emotions influence decisions. Decisions form habits. Habits construct destiny. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is isolated. This awareness makes you intentional with your inner dialogue. You speak to yourself with authority, not indulgence. Encouragement, not excuse. Silence becomes comfortable. You do not need constant stimulation to feel alive. You can sit with your thoughts. You can plan. You can reflect. Stillness becomes a tool, not a threat. From stillness, precision is born, and precision multiplies results. The world may still misinterpret you. Some will call you intense. Others will say you've changed. They are right. You have. Growth always looks like distance to those who stay the same. The bold do not explain evolution. They embody it. There is a deep respect that emerges for time. You stop killing it. You stop wasting it. You understand that every hour invested wisely compounds into freedom later. The bold are patient with people but ruthless with time. Time is the one currency that never returns. Eventually, ambition softens into stewardship. You stop asking how far you can go and start asking how well you can carry what you've been given. Leadership feels heavier now, but meaningful. You understand that your discipline creates safety for others. Your consistency creates trust. Your courage creates possibility. And through all of this, the law remains active, watching, measuring, responding. Whenever you hesitate, momentum slows. Whenever you commit, momentum returns. It is impartial, unemotional, exact. You stop trying to outsmart life and start aligning with it. You move when it is time to move. You wait when it is time to prepare. You no longer confuse stillness with stagnation or speed with progress. You act with intention. This is wisdom earned, not taught. And if ever the road narrows again, if pressure increases, if uncertainty thickens, you will not panic. Narrow roads are where the uncommitted turn back. They are also where clarity sharpens and purpose concentrates. The bold walk forward anyway, because now you know the cost of turning back. You know the weight of regret. You know the ache of unused potential. You know how loud that inner voice becomes when ignored too long. You will not return to that life. So you keep choosing, you keep moving, you keep refining, not chasing greatness, but honoring it. And that is the final evolution. You stop trying to become bold. You simply live in alignment with the truth that boldness revealed to you long ago, that life responds to direction, that reality bends to consistency, that destiny is shaped by daily decisions, not dramatic moments, and that success, unyielding, demanding, exacting success, has always been listening for the same signal, not words, not wishes, not waiting, action, commitment, courage sustained over time. That is the language it understands, that is the currency it respects, and that is why, no matter the era, no matter the obstacle, no matter the starting point, this law remains undefeated. Success does not follow the careful. It does not reward the hesitant. It does not wait for permission. It moves only when you do. And once that understanding is carved into you, there is no going back to sleep. You can rest, but you cannot return to unconscious living. Awareness changes everything. You see how every excuse once sounded reasonable only because you had not yet decided who you were willing to become. Now, excuses sound hollow. They have lost their authority. You begin to move with inevitability. Not haste, not recklessness, inevitability. Step by step, day by day, decision by decision. The bold understand that destiny is not chased, it is claimed through alignment. When your habits match your vision, friction decreases. When your standards match your goals, resistance weakens. Life stops fighting you when you stop contradicting yourself. You notice how your presence alone shifts rooms, not because you demand attention, but because you carry certainty. People feel it. Certainty is contagious. It calms some, it challenges others, but it never goes unnoticed. This is the power of congruence, when who you say you are, who you think you are, and how you act finally agree. At this stage, temptation changes shape. It no longer looks like laziness. It looks like comfort disguised as success. Settling, coasting, playing smaller than your capacity because you've proven enough to feel safe. This is the most dangerous moment. The bold recognize it immediately. They remember that stagnation is decay wearing a pleasant mask. They raise the standard again, not because they are dissatisfied, but because they are alive. Growth is no longer about proving worth. It is about honoring potential. You begin to measure success differently. Less by accumulation, more by alignment. Less by how much you control, more by how well you govern yourself. Freedom becomes the ultimate currency. Freedom of thought, freedom of time, freedom of direction, and freedom demands discipline. You see now why so many avoid this path. It removes excuses, it removes blame, it removes the comfort of victimhood. It hands you the steering wheel and says, drive. Many would rather complain from the passenger seat than accept the responsibility of direction. The bold choose direction. They accept that some doors only open from the inside, that some answers arrive only after movement, that confidence is not built by thinking, but by surviving proof earned through action. There is a quiet pride here, not arrogance, pride rooted in effort, in knowing you did not betray yourself when it mattered, in knowing you chose the harder road when the easier one was available. That pride stabilizes you when the world tries to shake you, and the world will try. Cycles repeat, economies shift, circumstances change, but the bold are not built on conditions, they are built on principles. Principles travel well, they work in chaos and calm alike, they outlast trends, they outlive titles. This is why true success looks calm from the outside. The storm has already been handled internally. You no longer need to announce your resilience. Life has tested it enough times to confirm it. You no longer fear uncertainty. You've learned it is the birthplace of opportunity. Predictability comforts the average. Uncertainty sharpens the bold. And so you lean in, not recklessly, but willingly. You understand now that the edge you once feared was never danger. It was invitation, an invitation to step beyond who you had been trained to be and into who you chose to become. That invitation never expires, but it does not wait forever. Every day answers it differently, with action or avoidance, with courage or comfort, with decision or delay. And every day, success listens. It listens for consistency. It listens for resolve. It listens for someone who will keep moving when results lag and faith is the only fuel left. That is why so few arrive, not because the path is hidden, but because the price is honesty with oneself. You must admit what you want. You must accept what it will cost. You must become what it requires. No shortcuts, no substitutes. And when you do, when your actions finally speak louder than your fears, something irreversible happens. You stop hoping life will change. You become the one who changes it. From that moment on, whatever you touch carries intention. Whatever you build carries structure. Whatever you pursue carries weight. Because you are no longer testing yourself. You are trusting yourself. And self-trust is the foundation of all achievement. So carry this forward, not as motivation, not as a speech, but as a standard. Move when it's hard. Choose when it's unclear. Persist when it's lonely. Do not wait for the world to understand. It never needed to. All it ever needed was proof. And proof is what the bold provide, every single day. That is why, in the end, success has no favorites, no bias, no emotion, only a response. It responds to those who step forward first. It responds to those who decide before certainty arrives. It responds to those who refuse to live on pause. It obeys only the bold. And if ever the road narrows again, if pressure increases, if uncertainty thickens, you will not panic. Narrow roads are where the uncommitted turn back. They are also where clarity sharpens and purpose concentrates. The bold walk forward anyway, because now you know the cost of turning back. You know the weight of regret. You know the ache of unused potential. You know how loud that inner voice becomes when ignored too long. You will not return to that life. So you keep choosing. You keep moving. You keep refining, not chasing greatness, but honoring it. And that is the final evolution. You stop trying to become bold. You simply live in alignment with the truth that boldness revealed to you long ago, that life responds to direction, that reality bends to consistency, that destiny is shaped by daily decisions, not dramatic moments, and that success, unyielding, demanding, exacting success, has always been listening for the same signal. Not words, not wishes, not waiting. Action, commitment, courage sustained over time. That is the language it understands. That is the currency it respects. And that is why, no matter the era, no matter the obstacle, no matter the starting point, this law remains undefeated. Success does not follow the careful. It does not reward the hesitant. It does not wait for permission. It moves only when you do. And as you continue forward, you realize that boldness is not a one-time act. It is a state of being. It is not something you turn on for the spotlight and off in the shadows. It saturates your thoughts, saturates your mornings, saturates your habits. It becomes the undercurrent of your decisions, the rhythm in your work, the silent pulse that drives every step. The bold are relentless because they have no alternative. Ordinary life feels unbearable after glimpsing what is possible. Mediocrity becomes a prison, and the cage bars are made of what-ifs and excuses. You no longer negotiate with them. You do not debate their legitimacy. You dismantle them with action. Boldness is always practical. Boldness moves. You learn that the world is not obliged to make sense of you. No one owes you clarity. No one owes you encouragement. No one owes you convenience. If you wait for external approval or alignment, decades will slip by like sand. The bold do not wait. They act first, and life aligns second. They understand that permission is an illusion. Authority begins within. Every failure becomes a tuition paid. Every obstacle a teacher. Every critique a mirror. The bold do not curse these lessons. They welcome them. Because they know the world's resistance is not a wall. It is a pressure test. And pressure does not break diamonds. pressure creates them. Patience is no longer passive. It is the active endurance of a system, the system being yourself. You grow, you adjust, you stretch, and you wait only where waiting produces value. You strike immediately where opportunity calls. The bold understand timing as a weapon, and timing requires awareness, discipline, and readiness. You do not guess, you observe. You do not hope, you act. You notice that influence grows without fanfare. People are drawn to the consistency of purpose, the precision of action, the clarity of identity. They may not always understand your methods, they may even doubt your speed or your choices. But the energy you carry, the intentionality in your steps, compels attention. The bold never chase followers, they cultivate presence. Influence is a byproduct of mastery. As the journey deepens, you find that fear is no longer an enemy, but a companion. It appears as doubt, hesitation, discomfort. But you greet it with recognition, not retreat. Fear signals growth. Fear signals the edge of potential. The bold step forward anyway, because they know the value of the threshold is always greater than the comfort of retreat. Even success itself becomes a lens, not a goal. You no longer seek wealth simply for its own sake, nor fame for recognition, nor comfort for avoidance. You seek alignment of purpose, principle, and action. Everything else follows. Wealth is amplified by clarity. Influence is multiplied by integrity. Freedom is measured not by possessions, but by the ability to choose consistently and without compromise. And you begin to understand the subtlety of this law. Success does not obey impulsive courage. It obeys consistent boldness, repeated over months, years, decades. It is not the dramatic act that commands reality. It is the persistent act, the repetition that survives monotony, fatigue, and doubt. Boldness sustained becomes inevitability. At this stage, the external world begins to reflect your internal mastery. Obstacles bend or dissolve, not because the world has changed, but because your response has. Resistance has no purchase against someone who has cultivated relentless internal authority. The bold navigate with the calm certainty of someone who knows that the path is always forged underfoot, not revealed from above. And still, the journey is unending. There is no final peak. There is no permanent plateau. Boldness demands continuous refinement, constant testing, and unwavering vigilance. The bold embrace this because they have discovered that complacency is the only true threat. They understand that growth is cyclical, relentless, and often invisible until a moment of undeniable consequence occurs. So the bold keep moving, they keep building, they keep choosing, they keep learning, they refine their character, sharpen their vision, and fortify their discipline, not for applause, not for comfort, not for validation, but because this is the law of life itself. This is the only currency that yields the results they seek. And when history is written, when the world takes note, when the outcome is undeniable, it is never because the bold were lucky, convenient, or favored. It is because they acted when others hesitated. They decided when others questioned. They persisted when others paused. They moved consistently, intentionally, and without compromise. Success does not bend for hesitation. It does not pause for doubt. It does not negotiate with fear. It obeys only the bold. And now, the question is no longer if you will act, but when and how boldly you will move when the choice arrives. And when that choice comes, because it always does, you will realize something the unprepared never see. Boldness is infectious. It spreads through action, not words. It creates a force field around you that attracts opportunity, repels mediocrity, and demands accountability. People will follow you, but not because you ask them to. They will follow because they sense certainty, consistency, and uncompromising intent. Influence is the shadow of boldness. At this level, hesitation becomes unthinkable. Decisions are not debated endlessly. They are made swiftly, executed precisely, and corrected intelligently. You understand that speed is a weapon when paired with clarity, and patience is a tool when paired with wisdom. The bold know when to strike and when to hold, and this mastery of timing multiplies every effort. Challenges still arrive, they always do, but you no longer perceive them as interruptions. They are calibrations. Life testing whether your resolve is as unshakable as it claims to be. The bold embrace them, dissect them, and convert them into leverage. Every problem becomes an opportunity to refine skill, character, and judgment. Adversity is no longer a threat, it is a proving ground. You also notice that the loudest resistance comes from within. Old beliefs, conditioned fears, self-imposed limits, they rise to the surface to test whether your transformation is authentic. The bold confront these shadows daily. They examine them, neutralize them, and continue moving. Courage is no longer the absence of fear. It is the presence of action despite fear. Action becomes instinct. Boldness becomes identity. With sustained boldness, impact grows organically, not by chance, not by luck, not by charm, but because persistent, intelligent action produces inevitable results. You see it in work, in relationships, in influence, in the capacity to shape outcomes that once seemed impossible. The bold understand that responsibility is power, and power without principle is a trap. They carry both with care, integrity, and focus. And through this, patience and endurance are tested over decades. The bold have learned to measure effort, not immediate results. They know that long-term consistency compounds exponentially. A single day's courage matters less than a life's commitment to decisive action. The world may reward some overnight, but the foundation of lasting success is never hurried. The bold build quietly, deliberately, invisibly, and the results eventually shout. The bold also learn to read signals. The faintest opportunities are recognized. The slightest patterns are understood. Timing, energy, and alignment converge to create moments that seem miraculous, but are nothing of the sort. They are the predictable outcome of relentless preparation and consistent boldness. Luck, for the bold, is simply life meeting readiness. You begin to see that success is not a mountain to climb, but a law to obey. It is impartial. It is consistent. It does not favor emotion, reputation, or complaints. It is responsive to action, intention, and courage sustained over time. Nothing else matters. No excuses, no waiting, no appeals to fortune. Only sustained, deliberate boldness compels reality to respond. And so, the bold continue. They act when others hesitate. They decide when others delay. They persist when others quit. Every step, every choice, every day builds momentum. Every refusal to compromise, every embrace of discomfort, every commitment to principle adds weight to their trajectory. The cumulative effect becomes unstoppable, and in the quiet moments, when reflection meets awareness, the bold recognize the truth. Life has been waiting for this all along, waiting for someone willing to act with courage, choose with conviction, and endure with patience, waiting for someone who refuses to shrink or negotiate with mediocrity, waiting for someone who will move first and move consistently. Because the law is simple, timeless, and unchanging, success does not wait. It does not negotiate. It does not bend for hesitation. It obeys only the bold. And in that obedience lies freedom. In that obedience lies influence. In that obedience lies the realization that every step you take from here forward is no longer tentative, no longer uncertain, no longer small. It is decisive. It is deliberate. It is unstoppable. The world cannot resist it. Reality cannot ignore it. Life itself must yield. It obeys only the bold. And now, with this truth etched into the marrow of your being, the only question remaining is whether you will step forward or stand aside. Because the law waits for no one. It obeys only the bold. And when you fully grasp this, something shifts inside. You realize that boldness is not simply a strategy. It is the foundation of your very existence. It is the lens through which every thought, every decision, every action is filtered. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop arguing with hesitation. You stop entertaining the illusions of comfort. Boldness becomes the unspoken rule of your life. Every morning becomes a declaration. Every action becomes a statement. Every challenge becomes a proving ground. The bold do not stumble through life hoping for alignment. They create it. They bend circumstances not by pleading, not by wishing, but by moving deliberately, relentlessly, intelligently. They understand that reality is pliable to consistent, purposeful force. Obstacles no longer intimidate, they illuminate. Each setback exposes a weakness to be corrected, a blind spot to be strengthened, a lesson to be applied. Boldness does not guarantee ease, but it guarantees progress. It guarantees that fear will shrink in comparison to will, that hesitation will collapse in the face of decision, that delay will surrender to relentless motion. And the world begins to respond, slowly at first, almost imperceptibly, then undeniably. Doors open that once seemed sealed. Opportunities arrive that seemed impossible. People take notice, not because you demand it, but because boldness cannot be ignored. Presence, consistency, courage, they create influence that spreads like a current, shifting everything around it. The bold understand that timing is everything, but they also know timing favors preparation. You cannot wait for perfect conditions. They do not exist. You cannot wait for external validation. It is unreliable. You act anyway. You choose anyway. You commit anyway. And in that commitment, momentum emerges. Momentum that compounds, that accelerates, that becomes irresistible. Failures still appear, but now they serve purpose. You no longer fear them. You do not curse them. You dissect them, learn from them, adapt, and move forward. Failure is not a verdict. It is data. It is feedback. It is an indicator of how far you can push, how much you can endure, how much sharper you can become. The bold embrace this because they understand that growth is forged in discomfort, not comfort. Self-mastery becomes the anchor of every success. The bold govern their emotions, manage their thoughts, and control their habits with precision. You no longer allow impulse to dictate action. You no longer let external chaos steal your focus. Your identity aligns with your ambitions, and your ambitions respond to that alignment. Decisions are no longer guesses, they are executions of a refined system of thinking and action. And in the silence of mastery, the truth reveals itself fully. Life is not random. Reality is not arbitrary. Success is not conditional on luck, on favor, on timing. It responds only to sustained, deliberate, fearless action. It obeys only the bold. Every pattern in history, every story of triumph, every achievement ever recorded confirms this. Edison, Carnegie, Ford, Lincoln, Disney, they all acted first. They decided fully. They persisted unrelentingly. The world did not hand them success, it responded to their audacity. And audacity, sustained audacity, is boldness. You now stand on the same foundation. You have the same laws operating around you. You have the same choice: step forward with courage, discipline, and consistency, or remain a spectator in your own life. Every day you hesitate is a day the law of success waits silently for your motion. Every day you act is a day reality begins to yield. Boldness is not occasional. It is continuous. It is habitual. It is relentless. And when it becomes who you are, when courage, clarity, discipline, and action saturate every fiber of your being, the world cannot resist. Doors will bend. Opportunities will align. Challenges will be met and mastered. Influence will ripple outward. And you will finally see in living color the unyielding principle that has guided every great life. Success does not negotiate. It does not pause. It does not wait. It obeys only the bold. And now, having heard this truth in its raw, uncompromising clarity, you understand that the only remaining question is whether you will move or linger. Because the law is impartial, exact, and relentless. It has been waiting. It has been listening. And it will obey, but only for those with the courage, the persistence, and the audacity to act without hesitation, to decide without doubt, and to live without compromise. It obeys only the bold, and the bold, those who truly understand, step forward, always forward.